Welcome back to Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life, the podcast. This is Life Coach Myrna Young, and you're listening to 5-Minute Fridays with Coach Myrna. Today, I want to recognize that Black History Month, February, and, share one of the literary greats with you today, Toni Morrison. I was introduced to Toni Morrison when my daughter had me read her book, The Bluest Eye. Oh my gosh. And I was so impressed. The story, it was one of those stories that you couldn't wait to listen to. I mean, it was done so wonderfully and beautifully. And that was Toni's first book. And she went on to do great things. I'm going to share some of her work with you today. But if you had not listened to any of her work, then you should definitely go and show some respect for one of our Black community's greatest literary stars. So, Toni Morrison, original name was Chloe Anthony Woodford, born February 18th, 1931. Hey, we're coming up to our birthday soon. It's amazing. In Lorain, Ohio. And died August the 5th, 2019 in the Bronx, New York. She was an American writer noted for her examination of the Black experience, particularly the Black female experience within the Black community. She received a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1993. Well, I'm very glad that she was recognized for her work because it was amazing. So Morrison grew up in the American Midwest in a family that possessed an intense love and appreciation for Black culture. Sometimes it does start at home. Storytelling, songs, folk tales were a deeply formative part of her childhood. She attended Howard University, received her Bachelor of Arts in 1953, and then went on to receive her Master's of Art in 1955 from Cornell University. In 1965, Morrison became a fiction editor at Random House, where she worked for a number of years. So what are we seeing? Her childhood, she was immersed in literature. She went on to get educated in literature, and then she worked in literature at Random House, one of the top, publishers. So if any of you are listening and you want to know how you get started on a career of excellence, this is one of the ways that you do it. Morrison's first book, The Bluest Eye, in 1970, is a novel of the initiation concerning a victimized adolescent Black girl who is obsessed by wide standards of beauty and longs to have blue eyes. And like I said, this book was my introduction to Toni Morrison, and I loved it. I loved the character. I loved how Morrison showed a poor Black girl struggling not only with her looks, but becoming a young lady. Her story of what happened when she first found out that she was bleeding and she thought she was dying. Oh my goodness. Was hilarious and sad at the same time, right? And then, this young lady wanted to be beautiful like her white dolls. She had a white doll that had blue eyes. And, my daughter, when she read this book and gave it to me to write, we all were coming to the consciousness of, at the time, my daughter was wearing blue and purple eyes because that was the thing at the time for Black women, to be wearing these colored contacts in their eyes. And allowed them to become conscious of what exactly they were doing. They were idolizing these white women with blue eyes, And I think what happened is the culture started to shift and, allowed Black women to start loving their skin, their eyes, their hair, their Black features. Because a lot of times when you were growing up in the era of that this book was written in, Black women didn't like any of those things. You looked at it as, as your features as being really ugly. But one of the things is I've always embraced my Blackness. I've always liked being my color, and never stayed out of the sun because I didn't want to get darker or any and stuff like that. To me, Black has always been beautiful. So I'm glad that Toni Morrison, started to lead us down that path as Black women. Her second book was called Sula, and it examines, among other issues, the dynamics of friendships and expectations for conformity within the Black community. In 1977, she wrote Song of Solomon, and it's told by a male narrator in search of his identity. Its publication brought Morrison to national attention. And then in 1981, she wrote Tar Baby, on a set in the Caribbean island. And this book explores the conflicts of race, class, and sex. Toni Morrison became mainstream when her critically acclaimed book called Beloved in 1987, which won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, and is based on a true story of a runaway slave who, at the point of recapture, kills her infant daughter in order to spare her life of slavery. The famous adaptation of the novel was released in 1998 and starred Oprah Winfrey. And again, this was powerful to me, just remembering this book and this story, and how powerful the image of Tandy Newton when she was pregnant. And oh my gosh, I'm still getting chills right now thinking of that, and the book not only showed about slavery and basically what your guilt can do, because Tandy Newton's character of Beloved was actually a reincarnation of Oprah Winfrey's guilt in killing her daughter, and she came back to haunt her. So the movie and the book opened up a lot of dynamics, not only about slavery, but also mental health issues. And it was great. So, Toni Morrison came to light, Oprah Winfrey, came into becoming a producer. Tandy Newton was amazing. So that was a good movie to watch. In 1992, Morrison released Jazz, a story of violence and passion set in New York City's Harlem during the 1920s. Subsequent novels were Paradise in 1998 and a richly detailed portrait of Black utopian community in Oklahoma, and Love in 2003. An intricate family story that reveals the myriad facets of love and its ostensible opposite. A Mercy in 2008 deals with slavery in the 17th century America. In The Redemptive Home, produced or done in 2012, Morrison showcased a traumatized Korean War veteran as they encounter racism after returning home, and later overcomes apathy to rescue his sister. In God Help the Child in 2015, Morrison chronicled the ramifications of child abuse and neglect through the tale of the bride, a Black girl with dark skin who was born to light-skinned parents. Oh my God. I haven't read that one, but I can just imagine the trauma of it all, right? Because, America is colorized, they love the light-skinned people and think that the dark-skinned people doesn't have any value. So in closing, I just want to say that Toni Morrison's central theme of all her novels was the Black American experience. We live in an unjust society. So her characters struggle to find themselves and their cultural identity. Her use of fantasy, her sinuous poetic style, and her rich interweaving of the mythic gave her stories great strength and texture. Like I said, from the Bluest Eyes, she had me hooked. In 2010, Morrison was made an officer of the French Legion of Honor. 2 years later, she was awarded the U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom. Toni Morrison, The Pieces I Am, in 2019, was a Netflix documentary about her life and career. So one of the great things about doing, or showcasing Toni Morrison in this Black History Month was that, it's great that we're not talking about people that were posthumously awarded. She was recognized while she was alive. She kept writing. Her first book was in, the 70s, and she kept writing almost to her death. So, we just love what she's left behind. She died in 2019, and she's left a legacy for us Black women so that we can understand that, the Black experience is not all peaches and creams, but we can survive. We can excel as she did. So thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of 5 Minute Fridays with Coach Myrna. I hope that you go and learn some more of Black history, whether it's men, whether it's women, so that we can, be on the heels of those that came before us. So thanks again for tuning in. If you're listening to this on iTunes, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to subscribe. Until next time, namaste.